The fluorescent lights of the hospital hallway seemed extra bright that evening as Nina pushed through the staff exit door. Her feet ached in a way that made every step feel like walking on hot coals. 12 hours. That's how long she'd been on her feet, moving from patient to patient, checking vitals, changing bedding, and offering whatever comfort she could to people having their worst days. She glanced at her phone. 6:45. The bus would be here in 8 minutes if she hurried. Her mother was watching Lily, her 5-year-old daughter, and Nina knew her mom had her own early shift at the grocery store tomorrow morning. Being late wasn't an option. The evening air hit her face as she half-walked, half-jogged toward the bus stop. Her scrubs, the pale blue ones with tiny clouds on them that Lily said looked like marshmallows, were wrinkled and carried that distinct hospital smell no amount of fabric softener could quite mask. Her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that had given up being neat somewhere around hour 6 of her shift. At the bus stop, she leaned against the metal pole and closed her eyes for just a second. Just 1 second of rest. That's all she needed. The bus arrived with its familiar hiss and squeak. Nina climbed aboard, her legs protesting each step. The driver, an older man she recognized from her regular route, gave her a sympathetic nod. He'd seen her plenty of times, always in scrubs, always looking exhausted. The bus was more crowded than usual. A Friday evening meant people heading home from work, teenagers going to the mall, elderly folks coming back from dinner. Nina scanned the seats, her heart sinking. Almost everything was taken. Then she spotted it. One empty seat near the middle, next to a man in a crisp navy suit. He was focused on a tablet, his fingers scrolling through what looked like endless columns of numbers and charts. His briefcase sat perfectly positioned between his feet, and his tie was still knotted properly despite it being the end of the workday. He looked like someone who had never felt tired a day in his life. Nina hesitated for a moment. The guy looked important. Probably didn't want some exhausted nurse assistant invading his space. But her feet made the decision for her. She shuffled over and quietly slid into the seat beside him. "Sorry," she mumbled, more to herself than to him. The man glanced up briefly, gave a polite nod, and returned to his tablet. Nina let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Good. No small talk. She couldn't handle small talk right now. She settled against the window, watching the city lights blur past as the bus pulled into traffic. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from her mom with a photo of Lily eating spaghetti. Red sauce smeared across her cheek like war paint. Nina smiled despite her exhaustion. That little girl was her entire world. The reason she dragged herself through 16-hour workdays, juggling 2 different medical facilities just to keep them afloat. The bus rocked gently as it moved through the streets. Nina's eyelids grew heavy. She fought it, blinking hard, sitting up straighter. She needed to stay awake. Her stop was in about an hour, and missing it would mean an even longer night. But the warmth of the bus after the cool evening air felt like a weighted blanket. The gentle vibration of the engine hummed a lullaby she couldn't resist. Her body, running on 3 hours of sleep from the night before, began to shut down whether she wanted it to or not. Her head started to drop forward, then jerked back up, once, twice. 3 times she caught herself. The man beside her didn't seem to notice, still absorbed in his work. Then slowly, inevitably, Nina's head tilted to the side. Her body, desperate for rest, found the nearest solid surface. Her temple came to rest gently against the man's shoulder. At first, the man tensed. His shoulders went rigid, and his scrolling finger paused mid-screen. He turned his head slightly, looking down at the woman now leaning against him. Her breathing had already deepened into the rhythm of sleep. Dark circles shadowed her eyes. Her hands resting in her lap showed the dry, cracked skin of someone who washed them 100 times a day. His first instinct was to wake her. A gentle nudge, a polite cough, but something stopped him. Maybe it was the hospital badge clipped to her scrubs. Maybe it was the way her entire body seemed to sag with exhaustion even in sleep. Maybe it was something deeper. Some memory of his own mother coming home from long shifts at the diner, barely able to stand, collapsing onto their worn-out couch without even taking off her shoes. Instead of moving away, the man did something unexpected. He carefully shifted his position, straightening his back to give her a more comfortable angle. He lowered the tablet slightly so his arm wouldn't jostle her, and then he just sat there, a stranger serving as a pillow for another stranger who desperately needed rest. Other passengers noticed. An elderly woman across the aisle smiled warmly at the scene. A teenage girl looked up from her phone and whispered to her friend, pointing subtly. The bus driver caught a glimpse in his mirror and his expression softened. The bus rolled on through the city. Stop after stop. People got on and off, their conversations and footsteps creating a gentle background noise. Through it all, Nina slept, her breathing steady and deep. The man in the suit occasionally glanced down at her, making sure she was still balanced comfortably. At one point, when the bus hit a pothole and lurched, he instinctively raised his arm slightly to keep her from sliding. He'd completely abandoned his work now, his tablet dark in his lap. 20 minutes passed, then 30, then 45. The automated voice announced Nina's stop. The bus slowed, pulling to the curb. People near the back door stood up, preparing to exit. Nina didn't move. The man looked down at her, then at the departing passengers. He could tell by the worn state of her badge and the way she'd collapsed into sleep that she'd intended to get off here. This was her stop. But she was sleeping so deeply, her body finally getting the rest it had been craving. He made a decision. He stayed quiet, let her sleep. The doors closed. The bus pulled away from the stop. Another 10 minutes passed before Nina suddenly jerked awake. Her eyes flew open, confusion flooding her face as she realized where she was. On a bus, leaning against someone. Against a complete stranger. She shot upright, her face flushing red. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to. She looked out the window, recognizing nothing. Her heart started pounding. Wait, where are we? The man set his tablet aside and turned to face her, his expression kind. About 3 stops past Maple Street, he said calmly. I think that's where you meant to get off? Nina's hand flew to her mouth. 3 stops? Why didn't you wake me up? Panic crept into her voice. Her mother was waiting. Lily needed to go to bed. This was going to add at least another 30 minutes to her trip. You looked like you needed the sleep, the man said simply, and you were out cold. I didn't have the heart to disturb you. Nina's embarrassment mixed with frustration and exhaustion, creating an overwhelming cocktail of emotions. She felt tears prick at her eyes and fought them back. She would not cry on a bus in front of a stranger. I'm sorry, she repeated, quieter this time. This is so unprofessional. It's been a really long day. A really long week, actually. The man's expression remained patient. Don't apologize. We all have those days. He paused, then added, Actually, we're heading back in the opposite direction at the next stop. I'll ride back with you to make sure you get to Maple Street. It's the least I can do after serving as your pillow. There was warmth in his voice, not mockery. Nina looked at him properly for the first time. Kind eyes, maybe late 30s, with an air of confidence that came from success but without the arrogance that usually accompanied it. You don't have to do that, Nina said, though relief flooded through her at the offer. I'm sure you have somewhere to be. The man smiled slightly. Nowhere that can't wait another half hour. As the bus pulled to the next stop and turned around, Nina found herself sitting beside this stranger once again, this time wide awake and completely mortified. But also somehow feeling like maybe the universe had put someone kind in her path exactly when she needed it most. The bus turned around at the transit center, and Nina found herself sitting beside the stranger again. This time, though, she was painfully aware of every movement, every breath. She kept her body angled toward the window, making absolutely sure no part of her would accidentally lean toward him again. I really am sorry about earlier, she said after a few moments of awkward silence. I work at Memorial Hospital and then I have a shift at the urgent care clinic on Riverside. By the time Friday evening rolls around, I'm basically a zombie. The man smiled, and it reached his eyes in a way that made him seem less like the intimidating businessman he appeared to be. 2 jobs? That's intense. How do you manage that? Nina let out a tired laugh. Barely. But my daughter needs things like food and a roof over her head, so you do what you have to do. How old is your daughter? 5. Her name's Lily. Nina's face softened the way it always did when she talked about her daughter. She's obsessed with dinosaurs right now. Can name like 30 different species. I can barely remember to pick up milk from the store, and she's over here explaining the difference between a brachiosaurus and a diplodocus. The man chuckled. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. Last week she asked me why we can't go on vacation like her friend from kindergarten. I had to explain that some people have different kinds of money situations. Nina's voice dropped a little. I don't think she really understood, but she hugged me and said it was okay, because our apartment was her favorite place anyway. She didn't know why she was sharing all this with a complete stranger. Maybe it was the exhaustion loosening her usual filters. Maybe it was because he was actually listening. Really listening in a way people rarely did anymore. Or maybe it was just nice to talk to another adult who wasn't asking her to check their vitals or refill their prescription. That's a good kid, the man said quietly. The best kid. Nina looked out the window as familiar buildings started appearing again. Her dad left when she was 2, said he didn't sign up for the responsibility. Left me with his half of the rent, his car payment that I couldn't afford, and a mountain of credit card debt I didn't even know existed. That's rough. Yeah. Well? Nina shrugged, trying to appear more casual than she felt. You learn who people really are when things get hard. Turns out he was someone who runs. I'm someone who stays. So here I am, 3 years later, still standing. Barely, but standing. The bus pulled up to Maple Street. The doors opened with their familiar hiss. Nina stood up quickly, grabbing her bag from the floor. This is me. Thank you for, not being weird about the whole sleeping thing, and for making sure I got back here. The man stood up too. I'll walk you to your stop. Make sure you get where you're going. You really don't have to. I know I don't have to, but humor me. My mother raised me better than to let someone navigate the city alone at night. They stepped off the bus together. The evening had shifted into proper night now, the streetlights casting orange pools on the sidewalk. Nina's mom lived about 4 blocks from the bus stop. An easy walk during daylight, but slightly less comfortable after dark. As they walked, the man asked, Do you ever get a day off? Sundays, usually, unless someone calls in sick, which happens more than it should. Nina adjusted her bag on her shoulder. I take Lily to the park when it's nice. Or we go to the library. She loves the library. It's free and they have AC in the summer, so it's basically perfect. Sounds like you've got it figured out. Nina laughed, but there was an edge to it. If by figured out you mean surviving day to day and hoping nothing unexpected happens, then sure. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs right when you think you're getting stable. They reached the corner where Nina's mother's apartment building stood, a tired-looking structure with faded brick and window AC units humming in the evening air. This is me, Nina said, stopping at the entrance. Thank you again. Really. You turned what could have been a terrible end to an already exhausting day into something kind of nice. The man reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a simple white business card. He held it out to her. Take this. Nina looked at the card but didn't take it immediately. What is this? My contact information. If you ever need anything, and I mean anything. A reference for a better job. Help navigating insurance issues, whatever. Just call. Nina finally took the card, reading it in the streetlight. The name said David Chen, and below it CEO, Chen Healthcare Solutions. Her eyes widened slightly. Wait, Chen Healthcare Solutions? That's that big company that owns like half the medical facilities in the state. David shrugged modestly. We have a few locations. A few? You guys are huge. Nina looked from the card to him, confusion crossing her face. Why would someone like you give someone like me your personal number? Because someone like me grew up with a mom who worked 3 jobs to keep us housed and fed. Someone like me remembers nights when she'd come home so tired she'd sleep in her work clothes. Someone like me had people help us when we needed it most, and I promised myself that if I ever had the means, I'd do the same. David's voice was steady, sincere, so I'm not offering charity. I'm offering the same hand up that was offered to me. Nina stared at the card, her throat tight. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything. Just keep the card. Use it if you need it. Don't use it if you don't. No strings attached, no expectations. Nina tucked the card carefully into her scrubs pocket. Thank you, David. You're welcome, Nina. He smiled. Now go get your daughter. I'm sure she's waiting up for you. Nina nodded and headed toward the building entrance, then paused and turned back. Hey, David? Yeah? Why didn't you wake me up? On the bus, I mean. You could have just nudged me when we got to my stop. David was quiet for a moment, his expression thoughtful. Because you look like someone who never gets to rest, and I figured 20 extra minutes of sleep was worth a slight detour. He paused. Plus, my shoulder was falling asleep anyway. Seemed only fair that at least one of us got some rest out of the deal. Nina laughed, a real laugh this time, and it felt good. Good night, David. Good night, Nina. She watched him walk back toward the main street, probably to catch a bus going the opposite direction, a CEO riding the city bus. That was something you didn't see every day. Upstairs, Nina found her mother dozing on the couch while Lily was curled up in the armchair, a dinosaur book open on her lap, fast asleep. Nina's mom woke up when the door clicked shut. "Sorry I'm late, Mom," Nina whispered. Her mother waved it off, gathering her things. "Don't worry about it, honey. Lily was an angel. We made pasta, read some books, and she told me all about pterodactyls." "Pteranodons," Nina corrected with a smile. "She's very specific about her pterosaurs." Her mother kissed her cheek. "Get some rest. You look exhausted." After her mom left, Nina scooped up Lily and carried her to the small bedroom they shared. She tucked her daughter in, kissing her forehead, breathing in that sweet kid smell of shampoo and innocence. Then Nina went to the bathroom and pulled out David's card. She ran her thumb over the embossed letters. Chen Healthcare Solutions. A CEO. Someone who could probably solve her problems with a phone call. But Nina had learned to be cautious about accepting help. It usually came with invisible strings, unspoken expectations, so she tucked the card into her wallet, behind her expired gym membership and her library card, where it would be safe but out of sight. She wouldn't use it. She couldn't. She'd gotten this far on her own, and she'd keep going the same way, or at least, that's what she told herself that night as she finally crawled into bed beside Lily, her body aching and her mind already dreading tomorrow's shift. What Nina didn't know was that 2 weeks from now, she'd be digging through that wallet with shaking hands and tears in her eyes, desperately hoping that David Chen had meant what he said, because life, as Nina knew all too well, had a funny way of throwing those curveballs right when you least expected them. The card would still be there, waiting. And so would David. 2 weeks passed and Nina almost forgot about the business card tucked in her wallet. Life had a way of moving forward whether you were ready or not. She worked her shifts, came home exhausted, played dinosaurs with Lily, and collapsed into bed only to do it all over again the next day. Then Tuesday happened. It started with Lily complaining that her throat hurt. Nina felt her forehead before kindergarten, noticed she was a little warm but nothing alarming. Kids got minor bugs all the time. She gave her some children's medicine, packed her lunch, and sent her off to school with her grandmother. By noon, Nina's phone was ringing. The school nurse. Lily's fever had spiked to 103. She needed to be picked up immediately. Nina's supervisor was understanding but firm. If she left her shift at the hospital, she couldn't come back. They were already short-staffed. Nina took the hit, clocked out, and took 2 buses to get to Lily's school. Her daughter looked miserable, slumped in the nurse's office with flushed cheeks and glassy eyes. Nina's heart clenched. She scooped her up, thanked the nurse, and headed home. The fever wouldn't break. Nina tried everything. Cool washcloths, lukewarm baths, children's fever reducer. Nothing worked. By Wednesday night, Lily was at 104, and Nina was pacing their tiny apartment with her phone in her hand. Thursday morning, she took Lily to the urgent care clinic where she worked part-time. Her co-worker, Dr. Patel, examined Lily thoroughly, his expression growing more serious by the minute. "Nina, I need you to take her to the emergency room. Her throat is severely inflamed and she's showing signs of dehydration. This could be a serious bacterial infection. She needs IV fluids and probably some tests." Nina's stomach dropped. "Can't we just do antibiotics here? I can make sure she drinks more water." Dr. Patel put his hand on her shoulder. "I know what you're thinking, but this isn't something we can handle here. She needs a hospital now." The emergency room was a nightmare of waiting and worry. They took Lily back fairly quickly once they saw her fever. But then came the part Nina had been dreading. The billing coordinator appeared with a clipboard and a sympathetic smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "We'll need your insurance information." Nina handed over the card for her basic plan. The cheapest one offered through the hospital. The coordinator typed into her computer, and Nina watched her expression shift ever so slightly. "Okay, so your plan covers 60% of emergency services after the deductible. Have you met your deductible this year?" "No." Nina's voice was barely a whisper. "Your deductible is $3,000. After that, you'll be responsible for 40% of costs." The coordinator kept her voice professional, but Nina could hear the practiced routine in it. She'd had this conversation with hundreds of patients. How much are we talking about? Roughly. The coordinator clicked through some screens. For the IV fluids, tests will need to run, and if she needs to stay overnight for observation, you're looking at probably 8 to 12,000 total. After your portion, maybe 3 to 5,000 out of pocket. Nina felt the room tilt. $3 to $5,000. She had about $400 in her checking account. Her rent was due in a week. She was already behind on the payment plan for her car repair from last month. Can we do a payment plan? Nina asked, already knowing the answer wouldn't help much. Of course. We can set something up, but we'll need a down payment today. Usually about 20% of thousands. Nina wanted to cry, scream, or both. Instead, she just nodded numbly. Okay, do what you need to do for my daughter. I'll figure it out. The test came back Friday morning. Severe strep throat with complications. Lily needed strong IV antibiotics, fluids, and at least 2 days of observation. The doctor, a kind woman in her 50s, explained everything carefully, but Nina barely heard her over the sound of her own panic. 2 days in the hospital. The bill was going to be catastrophic. Friday afternoon, while Lily slept fitfully in the hospital bed, Nina sat in the uncomfortable chair beside her and opened her wallet. She pulled out David's card and stared at it for a long time. Her pride screamed at her not to call. She'd handled everything else on her own. But this wasn't about her pride anymore. This was about Lily getting better. About not drowning in medical debt so deep she'd never surface. She stepped into the hallway and dialed the number with shaking hands. It rang twice before a professional female voice answered. David Chen's office, this is Rebecca speaking. Nina almost hung up. What was she doing, calling a CEO? He probably didn't even remember her. Hi, my name is Nina Rodriguez. David gave me his card a couple weeks ago and said to call if I needed anything. I'm sorry to bother him, I know he's probably really busy. One moment, please. The hold music was some classical piece that would have been soothing under any other circumstances. Nina leaned against the wall, her free hand pressed to her forehead. Then David's voice came through, clear and concerned. Nina, is everything okay? She hadn't expected him to remember her name. That small recognition broke something loose in her chest. I'm so sorry to call you. I know you're busy. You said if I ever needed anything. What happened? The kindness in his voice undid her completely. The words tumbled out. Lily's fever, the hospital, the tests, the money she didn't have. Nina tried to keep her voice steady, professional, but it cracked anyway. I'm not asking for money. You said you might know about programs or resources? Anything that might help with medical bills? I'll work payment plans, I'll pick up extra shifts, I just need to know where to start. David was quiet for a moment, but she could hear him moving, the sound of papers shuffling. Which hospital are you at? Memorial. The main campus downtown, what floor? Pediatrics. 4th floor. But David, you don't need to. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Don't talk to billing until I get there, okay? David, I can't ask you to come here. I just needed some advice. Nina. His voice was firm but gentle. I'm not asking. I'm on my way. He hung up before she could protest further. Nina stood in the hallway, her phone still pressed to her ear, wondering what she'd just done. 20 minutes later, she found out. David appeared at the nurse's station wearing khaki pants and a simple button-down shirt, looking somehow both casual and important. He spotted Nina and walked straight over. How's Lily? Sleeping. They've got her on strong antibiotics. Nina's hands were twisting together, a nervous habit she couldn't control. David, I feel terrible calling you like this. I just didn't know what else to do. Stop apologizing. I'm glad you called. He looked toward Lily's room. Can I see her? They walked in together quietly. Lily was still asleep, her small face peaceful despite the IV line in her arm and the monitors beeping softly beside her bed. David stood at the foot of the bed, his expression softening. She looks like you, he said quietly. Poor kid. Nina tried to joke, but her voice was too tight. David turned to face her. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to make a phone call. Lily is going to get the absolute best care this hospital can provide, and you're not going to worry about the bill. I can't let you pay for. You're not letting me do anything. Chen Healthcare Solutions has a patient assistance program. It's designed exactly for situations like this. Hardworking people who fall through the insurance cracks. He pulled out his phone. I'm just going to make sure they know about your situation. David, that's not. You can't just. He looked at her and his expression was so earnest it made her chest hurt. Nina, my mom got pneumonia when I was 12. We had no insurance. A doctor at the free clinic pulled strings, called in favors, and got her into a hospital program that saved her life. He didn't know us. He just saw someone who needed help and decided to help. David glanced back at Lily. I built my company so I could be that doctor for other people. Please let me do what I built this whole thing for. Nina felt tears spill over and she didn't even try to stop them. I don't know how to thank you. You don't need to thank me. Just focus on your daughter getting better. He smiled slightly. Besides, you gave me the best nap I've had in months a couple weeks ago. Consider us even. Despite everything, Nina laughed through her tears. David made his phone call, stepping into the hallway. When he came back 10 minutes later, he had news that would change everything. It's taken care of. The entire bill. And the head of pediatrics, Dr. Morrison. She's one of the best in the state. She'll be overseeing Lily's care personally. Nina just stared at him, unable to form words. Your daughter is going to be fine. Nina, and you're going to be fine too. For the first time in 3 days, Nina actually believed it. Lily came home from the hospital on Sunday afternoon, still tired but smiling again. Her fever had broken, her throat didn't hurt, and she was already asking if she could bring her dinosaur book to show and tell when she went back to school. Nina tucked her into their shared bed, surrounded by stuffed animals and picture books, and finally allowed herself to breathe. Her daughter was okay. That was all that mattered. What she didn't expect was the phone call on Monday morning. Is this Nina Rodriguez? The voice was professional, female, unfamiliar. Yes? This is Catherine Wells from Chen Healthcare Solutions. David Chen asked me to reach out to you. Do you have a few minutes to talk? Nina's heart started racing. Had something gone wrong with the hospital bill? Sure, is everything okay? Everything's fine. Actually, better than fine. David mentioned that you work as a nursing assistant at 2 different facilities, is that correct? Yes, Memorial Hospital and Riverside Urgent Care. And you have experience working directly with patients, handling their concerns, helping them navigate treatment? Nina sat down at her small kitchen table, confused. Yeah, that's basically my job. Why? Catherine's tone warmed up. We have a position opening up at Chen Medical Center downtown. It's a patient advocate coordinator role. Essentially, you'd be working with patients who are struggling to navigate the healthcare system, insurance issues, billing problems, finding the right specialists, connecting people with assistance programs. Things like that. Nina blinked. Okay, that sounds nice, but I'm not really qualified for something like that. I don't have a degree or anything fancy. Actually, you're more qualified than most people who apply. You have hands-on experience with patients, you understand the system from the inside, and more importantly, you understand what it's like to struggle with it. That's exactly what we need. Catherine paused. The position pays $58,000 a year with full benefits, health, dental, vision, and a retirement plan. Plus, it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. No weekends, no night shifts. Nina's mouth went dry. $58,000. That was more than both her current jobs combined. And normal hours? She couldn't even imagine what that would feel like. Are you serious? Completely serious. I'm emailing you the job description right now. Take a look and let me know if you're interested. We'd love to set up an interview. After they hung up, Nina sat staring at her phone. Then she opened her email and read through the job description 3 times. It was real. It was a real position that had been posted for 2 months, looking for someone with exactly her kind of experience. But the timing felt wrong. Too convenient. Too perfect. She called David that afternoon after putting Lily down for her nap. Did you create a fake job for me? She asked without preamble. David laughed. Hello to you too, Nina. I'm serious. This patient advocate thing. Did you just make that up because you feel sorry for me? Check the hospital website. That position has been posted since July. I've been trying to fill it for months. His voice turned more serious. Every person I interviewed had perfect credentials, degrees from good schools, impressive resumes, and every single one of them talked about healthcare like it was a business problem to solve, not actual human beings who are scared and confused and don't know how to ask for help. Nina was quiet. Then I met you on that bus, and you told me about working 2 jobs to support your daughter, about navigating the system from the bottom up, about understanding what it's like when healthcare feels impossible to access. David paused. You're not a business solution, Nina. You're exactly what that position needs, someone who actually gets it. But you wouldn't have called me if we hadn't met, if I hadn't fallen asleep on your shoulder. No, probably not. Because I was looking in the wrong places. I was looking at resumes and credentials when I should have been looking for someone with real empathy. Someone who's lived it. He let that sink in. This isn't charity. This is me realizing I was being an idiot about my hiring criteria. You'd actually be doing me a favor by taking this job, because it's been empty way too long. Nina felt tears prick her eyes again. She seemed to cry a lot lately. What if I'm not good at it? Then we'll figure it out together. But I don't think that's going to be a problem. The interview was Tuesday afternoon. Nina wore her one good dress, the navy blue one she'd bought for a cousin's wedding 3 years ago. She met with Catherine and 2 other people from the patient advocacy department. They asked her about difficult situations she'd handled, how she would approach various scenarios, what she thought the biggest barriers were in healthcare access. Nina answered honestly. She talked about the elderly man who couldn't afford his heart medication and was rationing pills, the young mother who left the ER against medical advice because she couldn't miss work, the teenager who needed mental health care but whose insurance wouldn't cover it. She told them what she would have wanted someone to do for her when she was sitting in that hospital hallway, terrified about the bill, trying to figure out how to keep her daughter healthy without losing their apartment. The interviewers looked at each other and nodded. Catherine smiled. When can you start? Nina gave her 2 weeks' notice at both jobs. Her supervisor at Memorial was disappointed but understanding. The manager at Riverside Urgent Care actually hugged her and told her she deserved something better. Those 2 weeks felt like the longest of her life. Excitement mixed with terror. What if she failed? What if David regretted recommending her? What if she wasn't smart enough or professional enough? Her mother, watching Lily while Nina packed up her locker at Memorial on her last day, told her to stop overthinking it. Sometimes good things happen to good people, Mija. Let yourself have this. Nina's first day at Chen Medical Center was overwhelming in the best way. She had her own desk, her own computer, business cards with her name on them. Catherine trained her personally, walking her through the systems, introducing her to doctors and nurses and administrators. Your job is to be the bridge, Catherine explained, between the patients who need help and the resources that exist. Sometimes that's paperwork, sometimes it's phone calls, sometimes it's just sitting with someone and listening while they cry because they're scared. Nina could do that. She'd been doing that her whole career just without the title or the pay. Within a month, she was handling a full caseload, a father whose daughter needed surgery and couldn't navigate the pre-authorization process, an elderly couple dealing with Medicare confusion, a young woman with chronic illness who'd been denied disability benefits 3 times. Nina helped them all. She learned the system inside and out, figured out which forms went where, which people to call, which programs existed that nobody knew about. She stayed late some nights, came in early others, driven by the memory of her own desperation in that hospital hallway. David stopped by her desk one afternoon about 6 weeks in. How's it going? Nina looked up from her computer, where she was tracking down a specialist referral for a patient. Honestly, this is the best job I've ever had. I actually feel like I'm making a difference. You are making a difference. I've gotten emails from patients you've helped. Good emails. He smiled. See, I told you that you were perfect for this. You were right. I hate admitting that, but you were right. David laughed. Want to grab coffee? There's something I want to talk to you about. They went to the hospital cafeteria, finding a quiet corner table away from the lunch rush. David ordered his coffee black. Nina got hers with extra cream and sugar, the way she'd always liked it but used to feel guilty ordering. So, David said, stirring his coffee absently, I've been thinking. That sounds dangerous. He smiled. The patient advocacy program is doing really well, better than I expected, honestly. And that's because of you. You've helped more people in 6 weeks than the program helped in the entire year before you started. Nina felt her cheeks warm. I'm just doing my job. You're doing more than your job. You're changing how we think about patient care here. David leaned forward slightly. I want to expand the program. Add more advocates, create a whole department, and I want you to help me build it. Me? David? I've only been here 6 weeks. Exactly. And in 6 weeks you've proven you understand this better than anyone. Who better to help design a program than someone who knows what patients actually need? He paused. I'm not talking about tomorrow. I'm talking about the next year, 2 years. Learning the administrative side, getting trained in program development, eventually maybe moving into a leadership role. Nina stared at him. You're talking about promoting me? I'm talking about investing in you, because I think you have the potential to run one of the best patient advocacy programs in the country. David's expression was earnest. You fell asleep on my shoulder on a bus, Nina, and somehow that random moment is turning into something that's going to help thousands of people. Don't you think that's worth exploring? Nina thought about Lily, about the life she wanted to give her daughter, about not having to choose between paying rent and buying groceries, about maybe someday even taking that vacation Lily's friend had asked about. But more than that, she thought about every person she'd helped in the past 6 weeks, every grateful phone call, every relieved face, every problem solved that had seemed impossible before. Yeah, she said softly. Yeah, I think it's worth exploring. David raised his coffee cup. To random bus encounters. Nina clinked her cup against his. To falling asleep on strangers. They both laughed, and Nina realized something that surprised her. Somewhere along the way, David had stopped being a stranger. He'd become something else entirely. She wasn't quite ready to examine what that meant. But sitting there in the cafeteria, drinking overpriced coffee and talking about the future, Nina felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time: hope. 6 months after Nina started at Chen Medical Center, her life looked completely different. She'd moved into a better apartment closer to Lily's school, one with 2 actual bedrooms and windows that didn't stick. She wasn't rich by any means, but for the first time in years, she could buy groceries without calculating every item's cost in her head. More than that, she loved her work. The patient advocacy program had grown from just Nina to a team of 4 advocates, and they were making real changes in how the hospital approached patient care. Nina had presented at staff meetings, trained new hires, and even spoken at a healthcare conference about bridging the gap between medical services and patient needs. Her relationship with David had evolved too, though neither of them had quite put a name to it yet. They had coffee together most mornings, lunch when their schedules aligned, and he'd started coming to her apartment on Friday nights for pizza and dinosaur documentaries with Lily. Her daughter adored him, especially after he'd shown up one day with a book about Pachycephalosaurus, her current favorite. Mr. David knows the cool dinosaurs, Lily had declared, and that was that. Nina's mother had noticed, of course. Mothers always noticed. He looks at you different, she'd said one Sunday while they were doing laundry at her apartment. Like you're the only person in the room. We're friends, Mom. Mija. I've seen friends. That's not friends. Nina had changed the subject, but the conversation stuck with her. Because her mother was right. The way David smiled when he saw her, the way he remembered little things she mentioned in passing, the way he'd learned how Lily liked her sandwiches cut into triangles, not squares. Those weren't just friendly gestures. And the way her heart jumped when she saw his name on her phone, the way she found herself looking forward to Monday mornings just to see him, the way she felt safe around him in a way she hadn't felt in years. That wasn't just friendship either. But Nina was cautious. She'd been burned before badly. And David wasn't just anyone. He was her boss, technically. He was the CEO of the company she worked for. Getting involved felt complicated and risky and potentially disastrous if things went wrong. So she kept things professional, friendly, safe, even when every part of her wanted more. The hospital's annual charity gala was in late March, a big fancy event where donors and staff mingled to raise money for patient programs. Nina's advocacy department was being recognized for their work, and she had to give a short speech about the program's impact. She bought a dress for the occasion, a simple emerald green one that her mother said brought out her eyes. Lily helped her pick out shoes, insisting on the ones with just a little bit of sparkle. The gala was held in a downtown hotel ballroom, all white tablecloths and string lights and people in expensive clothes. Nina felt out of place until David found her near the entrance. "You look beautiful," he said, and the way he said it made her believe it. "You clean up pretty nice yourself," she managed, taking in his perfectly tailored suit. They sat at the same table during dinner, along with Catherine and several other department heads. The food was fancier than anything Nina usually ate, tiny portions arranged artistically on huge plates. David leaned over at one point and whispered, "We're definitely getting burgers after this, right?" Nina laughed, some of her nervousness dissolving. When it was time for her speech, David gave her an encouraging nod. She walked to the podium, looked out at the sea of faces, and spoke from the heart about what the advocacy program meant. She told stories, carefully keeping patients anonymous, about lives changed and problems solved, about the woman who'd been able to get her cancer treatment because someone helped her navigate the system, about the man who'd kept his home because they found him assistance with his medical bills. "None of this was possible before," Nina said, gripping the podium. "Not because the resources didn't exist, but because nobody was connecting the people who needed help with the help that was available. That's what this program does. It builds bridges, and I'm honored to be part of building them." The applause was genuine and warm. As Nina returned to her seat, David caught her hand briefly and squeezed it. "Perfect," he mouthed. Later in the evening, after the formal program ended and people mingled with drinks, David asked Nina to step outside to the terrace. The March air was cool but not cold, and the city lights spread out below them like scattered stars. "I have something for you," David said, pulling an envelope from his jacket pocket. "For the program, actually." Nina opened it, confused. Inside was a check made out to the Patient Advocacy Fund for $50,000. From David personally. "David, this is too much." "It's not enough," he interrupted gently. "I've been thinking about what you said in your speech, about building bridges, and I realized we could do so much more." He turned to face her fully. "I want to create a foundation, a real nonprofit arm of the company dedicated to helping people who fall through the cracks. Free care coordination, assistance with bills, help navigating insurance, all of it. And I want you to help me build it." Nina stared at the check, then at him. "You want me to run a foundation?" "I want us to build it together. You understand what people need because you've been there. I have the resources to make it happen. Together we could help thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands eventually." "David, that's..." Nina's voice caught. "That's incredible. But why me? You could hire someone with experience in nonprofit management, someone who's done this before." David was quiet for a moment, his expression serious in a way she'd rarely seen. "Because a year ago you fell asleep on my shoulder on a bus. And that random moment reminded me why I got into healthcare in the first place. It wasn't about building a successful company or making money or any of that. It was about helping people the way people helped my mom when we had nothing." He stepped closer. "You didn't just remind me of that, Nina. You showed me how to actually do it. Every day I watch you connect with patients in ways I never could. You see them, really see them, because you've been where they are. That's not something you can learn in business school or put on a resume." Nina felt tears threatening, but happy ones this time. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." David smiled slightly. "Though I'm hoping you'll say yes." "I'll think about it," Nina said, but she was already mentally saying yes. They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, the sounds of the party drifting out from inside. Then David spoke again, his voice softer. "There's something else I need to tell you, and I've been trying to find the right time, but I don't think there is a right time, so I'm just going to say it." Nina's heart started pounding. "Okay. That day on the bus when you fell asleep, I could have woken you up. It would have been the logical thing to do. But I didn't, because even then, even as a complete stranger, I felt something. Like I was supposed to meet you. Like that moment mattered." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncharacteristically nervous. "And then I got to know you, and everything I felt that first day just grew into something I can't ignore anymore. David, I know this is complicated. I know I'm technically your boss, and that makes everything messy. I know you have Lily to think about and good reasons to be careful. But Nina, I'm in love with you. I have been for months. And I needed you to know that even if you don't feel the same way." Nina's breath caught. All the reasons she'd been holding back suddenly seemed very small compared to what she felt standing there on that terrace with him. "You love me?" "I love you. Both of you, actually." You and Lily. You're both incredible, and I can't imagine my life without you in it anymore. Nina laughed, tears spilling over now. You know that day on the bus? When I woke up and I was mortified? I remember. I thought you were just some businessman who probably thought I was a mess. I never imagined that falling asleep on a stranger would lead to all of this. A new job, a new life, and she stepped closer to him. And falling in love with someone who sees me, really sees me, and loves me anyway. David's expression transformed. You love me? I've been trying not to for months. But yeah, I do. I really do. He kissed her then, gentle and sure, and Nina felt something she'd stopped believing in years ago. She felt like everything was going to be okay, more than okay. She felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. When they pulled apart, both smiling, David said, "So, about that foundation," Nina laughed. Yes, to the foundation, to everything. Yes. From inside they could hear the party continuing, people celebrating and talking and planning for the future. But out on the terrace, Nina and David stood together. Two people whose lives had intersected by pure chance and changed each other completely. A year ago, Nina had been working 2 jobs, exhausted and overwhelmed, falling asleep on a stranger's shoulder because she literally couldn't keep her eyes open. Now she was standing in an evening gown at a charity gala, planning a foundation that would help thousands of people, and falling into the arms of someone who loved her. Life was funny that way. Sometimes your lowest moment, when you were too tired to even stay awake on a bus ride home, could turn into the beginning of everything you'd ever hoped for. Should we go back inside? David asked, still holding her hand. Nina looked at the party through the glass doors, then back at him. In a minute. I just want to stand here for a second and appreciate how far we've come, from a bus seat to here. It's kind of amazing when you think about it. It is amazing. You're amazing. We're amazing, Nina corrected, squeezing his hand. And standing there under the stars with the man she loved and a future full of possibility stretching out before her, Nina finally understood what her mother had been trying to tell her all along. Sometimes good things really do happen to good people. You just have to be brave enough to accept them when they do.